We've already done the plot of the play, The Crucible by Arthur Miller. Now we shall do some literary analysis. But before we begin the literary analysis, let me find out whether you remember what we did in the earlier lesson. Do you remember how many acts were there in the play?
4 acts, ma'am.
Very good. Where did the first act take place?
In the house.
Whose house?
It's in Reverend Paris' house.
It's in the house of Reverend Paris. That's very good. Now, Reverend Paris has a little girl who is ill in the beginning of the scene. Do you remember what her name is?
Betty.
Very good. Abigail, who's Reverend Paris's niece, is not a protagonist. I gave you some other word for this. Do you remember? She's a negative character.
Yeah, it's an antagonist.
Antagonist. Very good. I also gave you the name of the protagonist of this play. Do you remember?
Proctor.
It's Proctor. Very good. Where does the last act of the play take place?
Prison.
Prison. Very good. Can you give one example of what signifies hope?
Birth of the child.
Very good. That is excellent. Birth of the child. Now, who is going to get this child?
Elizabeth.
That's wonderful. So, you remember very well what we did in the first lesson. First, we shall talk about the themes. In drama, themes are very important. One of the major themes he talks about here is the nature of the human being and social values. The nature of the human being. Take, for example, Abigail feels a sense of hatred for Proctor and for his wife. So she wants to destroy Proctor and his wife, or at least kill Elizabeth so that she can have Proctor to herself. Now, what kind of values does she have? She has no values. She doesn't think that life is important. She kills people so that she can save herself. The second point is that vengeance is also important. She wants to take revenge on Proctor and Elizabeth. Therefore, she says that Proctor is unreliable. There was a time when she pretended to love Proctor. Today she doesn't, because she says that he is the one who is endangering her life. Then you also have the theme of the handing over of somebody's conscience to another person. Here I would like to read out to you a line from the play. Danforth says, "Will you tell me now what persons conspired with you in the devil's company?" You can guess easily that he is asking this question to Proctor in the last act of the play. He says, "Can you in your confession tell me who else was there with you when you were conspiring with the devil?" He wanted Proctor to tell the name of Rebecca. Proctor says, no, he's not going to tell. He's not willing to hand over his conscience to the people of authority. This is the second theme which we are talking over, handing over our conscience. Miller had a similar experience. McCarthy's team asked Miller, "Can you tell about your friends who are communists?" Miller says, "No, I will not talk about any of my friends. I refuse to indict my friends." So look at what Proctor replies, and I read out to you this. "I speak my own sins," Proctor says. "I speak my own sins. I cannot judge another. I have no tongue for it." Means I'm not going to tell about the mistakes of others. I can only say that I have committed a mistake. This shows you that Proctor has courage and conviction. He has the courage to first say that he's committed the sin. Then he has conviction that he should not blame his friends. Now we are going to do a third theme, and that is the theme of integrity. Abigail has no integrity because to save herself, she indicts others. Innocent people she destroys. Thomas Putnam has no integrity because he is willing to kill people in order to get their property. Reverend Hale has a lot of integrity, but he cannot use that integrity because he is silenced by Judge Hathorne and Governor Danforth. Whereas Proctor has a lot of integrity. Elizabeth has a lot of integrity. Now we shall talk about the language of this play, which also implies Miller's style. Miller's style is very close to the original dialect of the Puritans 400 years or 300 years ago in the 17th century. He does not use modern English in this play. He uses a Puritan dialect. That means we can say Miller's style is realistic. When we come to the language of this play, you will see the use of the auxiliary verb. So in Puritan English, the use of the auxiliary verb is different from modern English. Miller retains this usage, and this gives a special rhythm to the play. When we come to the language of this play, I would like to again read out to you a few of these sentences in order to explain to you how the language is different. So by using language, Miller has to communicate his ideas. Each character speaks in a different way so that you can understand how people are. The wife of Putnam is speaking. Putnam is evil. He's one of the negative characters. The wife is speaking about Betty's illness. She says, "She ails as she must." They're very superstitious. You can see the superstition is coming through here. "She never waked this morning." We don't say waked anymore. In modern English, we don't have this term at all. We say awaken or wake up. How does she use it? "She never waked this morning, but her eyes open and she walks." We never use like this. We say that her eyes opened. Look at the use of the verb form. Now we are using the verb form in its base infinitive, not in its tense form. These are significant points of language which we have to see. Her husband says, "There is a murdering witch amongst us, bound to keep herself in the dark." Putnam is very keen to prove that everybody is a witch, so he says like that. Now Mary Warren speaks in a hysterical tone because she is a part of the mass hysteria. So look at the hysterical language. I'll read it quickly so that you can get the whole thing. "In open court, she nearly choked us all to death. She sent her spirits out. She tried to kill me many times." Imagine if somebody gives witness like that, won't others believe? This is the tone which was used in the court. You can see she says, "I never knew it before. I never knew anything before. When she comes into court, I say to myself, I must not accuse her. Then she sits there, denying and denying, and I feel a misty coldness climbing on my back." Do you see? This is how the play is enacted. I told you, keep your mind as the stage. Then you will get the real feel of the play when you read the play. This is the aspect of language. Then you have the language of Hale. Contrast this language, very rational, very balanced language Hale has. He says, "Excellency, I have signed 72 death warrants." Look at the emotion. Hale is signing the death warrants. "I have signed 72 death warrants," he says, "but I haven't found the devil yet." This is what he says. "I haven't found the devil. I'm a minister of the Lord. I dare not take a life without there be a proof so immaculate no slightest qualm of conscience may doubt it." Where is the proof that I'm committing these people to death? This is what Hale says. So you can see some people are overly emotional, some people are very balanced, some people are crooked. All this comes through the language. we are going to talk about metaphors, symbols and dramatic devices in Arthur Miller's play The Crucible. Often we can say that the entire play is metaphoric of McCarthyism. The metaphor is an indirect comparison. Although we are reading the story of 1692, Miller's actual reference is 1951. So that is a metaphor. Many metaphors occur in this play also. But more important is the symbol. We have many symbols in this play. For instance, when Proctor and his wife are talking, we have words like farming, sowing, garnering, etc. These are all symbols of fertility because their marriage is a broken marriage. The husband and wife, to start with, are not able to get along with each other. So the infertility of their marriage is being contrasted by symbols of fertility in the play. Then I told you when I was talking about the title, The Crucible, that fire is a very significant symbol. So again and again, the word fire and the word light comes in the play. These have symbolic significance because fire, as I mentioned already, is a good fire when it comes to Proctor, because by being tortured by the court and by his community, he gets self-knowledge. He becomes morally stronger. So for him, it is a purificatory fire. Whereas for Abigail and Putnam, it is a fire of jealousy. It is a fire of hatred. It is a fire of guilt. Like that, everybody is burning in some fire or the other. Then there is the concept of light. We all know that hell is supposed to be dark and the devil stays in hell. Therefore, the devil cannot face light. This is used again and again. The forest is a symbol of anarchy, darkness. Like the devil can be there in the forest. So anarchy, lawlessness, and the civilization is in the city, the forest is uncivilized. This symbol is also used. Now we come to dramatic devices. A significant dramatic device in this play is the dramatist intrusion. Miller uses this. The play begins with the dramatist's intrusion. The play also ends with the dramatist's intrusion because Miller wants to give significant comments which he cannot trust the characters to give. Therefore, we find that he is making these intrusions. Then we have what is called as the time frames. Very often, the past is used to explain the present. If you take a larger metaphor of the two time schemes, 1692 and 1953, then you find that there is this time frame. But within the play also, there is the time frame. Remember that there is an 8-day gap between the first act and the second act. Betty dances in the forest. It is not shown on stage. We are told that Betty dances in the forest. So the past governing the present. This is an important dramatic device. Then you also have the setting as an important dramatic device. You remember that the first scene and the second scene are set in the house. And the third and the fourth scene are set in the court and the prison respectively. So we can say that this is a device of a progressive movement from the private sphere to the public sphere. From private, our own house, to public, in front of everybody, the court and the prison. Many other dramatic devices are also used. Now, I'm sure when you read Miller's play, you will come across many significant devices. We are going to talk about Crucible as a tragedy. Tragedy is one of the most important forms of drama. In the Greek times, tragedy was considered to be the highest form of literature. Remember Aristotle? He's a Greek philosopher. He said, tragedy is always about a superhuman hero, but he suffers because of a tragic flaw. This also is a very important term, the tragic flaw. And what happens to him is a reversal of fortunes. These are some of the major aspects which we are going to talk about when we talk about Crucible as a tragedy. Now let us talk first about the superhuman hero. Miller's plays have often been described not completely as a tragedy, not as a classical tragedy, but as minor social tragedies. So here is a minor social tragedy where we don't have a really superhuman hero, but we have a hero who has some great qualities. He is the protagonist, Proctor. He's a very honest and upright person, a person who has high integrity, but he has some faults also. One of the problems, the tragic flaw here, is that he does not take decisions. The problem is that he does not participate in public life. He does not follow the rules of the Puritan society. These are the problems he has. So the sin he committed is a momentary sin of adultery, and therefore he has to suffer. But Miller is not interested in morality of marriage. He is interested in the morality of power. Therefore, Proctor's problem is that he is not able to exercise his power. Now we have also the reversal. Remember, one example of the reversal is Elizabeth's testimony in court. Everybody thinks that Elizabeth will tell the truth, and Elizabeth will come and say that Abigail is a whore. But Elizabeth refuses. Once, at this one point in her life, she tells a lie, thinking that I'm being loyal to my husband. But by being loyal to her husband, she brings a death sentence to her husband. She doesn't save the husband, she condemns the husband without realizing it. This is one reversal. There is another reversal also when Proctor writes his confession and gives it to Danforth. What happens? Danforth says, blame Rebecca. He refuses to do it. He tears up his confession. This is the second reversal. So we find that the major point of tragedy in this play is that the people in power are misusing their power. The people in power have lost the ability to discriminate between right and wrong. Miller wants to express this, and therefore he uses the play as his mouthpiece. In the play, he wants to explore the possibilities of bringing the conscience back to society. He wants a society with a conscience. Evil was a very significant concept in the 17th century America. 17th century America was Puritan America. Thought that they were the chosen people and their job was to purify the religion. Religion here means Christianity. Puritan, the name comes from the word pure, pure, purifying. So they were trying to purify the religion. Purifying the religion would mean to remove evil. So they were all the time thinking about evil. Evil was something which came to their minds often. Sin was what evil came as. And the representative, the embodiment of evil was the devil. So they kept searching for the devil everywhere. When Betty falls ill, they start searching for the devil. They send for Reverend Hale, and they say Reverend Hale can find the devil. Throughout the play, Reverend Hale searches for the devil, but he finds no devil. At the end, he leaves the court in disgust. He says, sorry, I cannot find the devil, and I cannot, with a clear conscience, sign 75 death warrants. He feels terrible. But the people in power refuse to listen to him because they feel that by condemning so many people to death, they are establishing their society, this community, as the best community in Puritan America. They want to have a model. They say, ours is a model community. You can learn from it. So we will kill all the people who have consorted with the devil. This idea comes powerfully. Miller's comment here is that people must first know what is good and what is evil. If these judges and Governor Danforth were capable of discrimination, they would have known that Abigail is evil, not Proctor and Rebecca, not the innocent people who were killed. So the concept of evil is closely linked with innocence and the destruction of innocence by people who are misusing their power. Finally, we shall come to characterization. Miller's characterization is very powerful. In this play, you find that his purpose of social criticism comes clearly through the characters. He creates very powerful individual characters whom we can call as round characters. But of course, since it is about the Puritan community, some stereotypical qualities are also present. Proctor, who is the protagonist, Reverend Hale, who is the specialist, Elizabeth, who is an important character, and Abigail, who is the antagonist. These are the four characters whom we are going to talk about. Now, when we read the plot of the play, I'm sure you formed an idea about characters. The characters appear according to their interaction. So we know Proctor is a very rational being. We also know that Proctor is a person who wants to have a stable family. But we also know that in a moment of sin, he transgressed from his marriage. We know also that Proctor feels very guilty for it, of his sin, and he wants to make up to his wife. He wants to be good to his wife. And when he hears that the wife is going to have a child, he gets a renewed desire for living. But Proctor is a very rational person. He doesn't have the commitment to religion which is required. He's a hard-working person who prefers to work in his fields rather than go to church. In the scene of the court, his only crime is that he has not been a good Puritan. Had he been a good Puritan, he would have been believed and Abigail would have been punished. But Abigail escapes because of Proctor's own fault of keeping away from the community activity. So Miller is using Proctor's character in order to tell us that you have to, although you are an individual, you have to live in the community by being a part of the community. Reverend Hale is another rational character. He's a very genuine character, but he is good passively. Miller uses his character to tell us that let us not be passive in our goodness, because tolerating evil is as much as perpetrating evil. You might not be doing evil, but you're allowing evil to go on, like killing 75 people. That means you are making a mistake. You have no right to do that. Hale should have raised his voice. He came as a specialist to find the devil. He could not find the devil. So if he was really acting according to his conscience, he would have refused to condemn anybody. But this he does not do. He only gives up. He is an escapist. That we find from his character. So a good character who has many moral virtues, but who grows and admits his own defeat, but cannot act on it. Proctor grows, and his growth brings him death. Hale grows, but he cannot get any benefit from it. Now, when we come to Elizabeth's character, we find a huge moral growth in Elizabeth. First, she is a character who condemns her husband. She is very cold, unforgiving. Proctor feels that if she had had a better wife, a more loving wife, he would have not looked at another woman. He does not have that. Therefore, what is required is that Elizabeth should change. Once Elizabeth is arrested, we find that the marriage is very strong because Proctor goes to court and says that I will give witness to save my wife. So although there is a small sin, it is not a broken marriage at all. Elizabeth also feels great loyalty for her husband, but this we can call as misplaced loyalty because she cannot save her husband, she condemns her husband. Abigail is a symbol of how self-interest can destroy others. Just to save herself, she has destroyed the Salem community. Proctor had warned about this, but nobody listened. And this is Miller's message. After finishing this characterization, you can easily read the play once. Then you will be able to find out what all I told you, how relevant they are. How is this play contemporarily relevant in 2011? You find so many scams around. You find how many people are misusing power. You find that people who are in high positions are torturing innocents. Are not these things happening even today? Miller wrote about it in the 20th century. We are living in the 21st century. The play depicts the 17th century. So across cultures, across centuries, the same power is being misused. Good people are punished. Evil people are torturing good people. This happens all the time. Miller raises his voice against it in a play which is a very powerful play called The Crucible.